Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining us tonight. We have a jam-packed show where we're talking about dating in the new age. First of all, can y'all believe it's September? We started planning some of these shows last month, and I cannot believe September is already here, September 1st. It's a lot happening. This year is flying by. We've only got like 4 months left in the year. But I decided that I want to put together a series about dating in the new age. You may have seen the flyer on the page talking about several different topics that are addressing dating. Tonight, we're going to be talking about dating specifically in 2021, how that looks, some of the changes that have been happening over the years, especially in the last 10 years. I found some great information online that could be very helpful to those who are actually in the dating world to understand that they may not be alone in some of the pitfalls that they're enduring when it comes to getting to know someone on a platonic or even romantic or relationship level. So let's bring our guest in tonight. I'm so happy to have returning with me Kimberly Johnson, who is a licensed professional counselor and also good friend of mine, Mandy Halloran, who is also a mental health awareness advocate. They are going to be bringing some great advice to us tonight. Now, if you saw on the flyer, John Ebron was supposed to be joining us. He can't make it to the show tonight. We wish him the best because he's actually moving across country right now. So, yeah, that's the big challenge that he's taking on. So we wish him the best with that. But he'll be on some of the shows in this relationship series that we're going to have a little bit later in the month. So Kimberly and Mandy, let's dive right in because we're actually a little bit late coming on to the show because we were actually talking a little bit behind the scenes about what it is to be dating in 2021 in this new age and how that looks. So Mandy, I'll start with you because I'm excited because you're here tonight and you're sharing some good news in the fact that you are in fact dating yourself. You've had a lot that's happened in your life here in South Carolina, and now you're making a transition and you're actually in a situation where you are very happy with the person that you have been dating. So tell us a little bit about what's been going on with you.
Yes. Okay. Well, thank you. I am a lifelong South Carolina resident, born and raised in South Carolina. I'm 50 years old and I have two grown children. One's 25, one's 22. They moved out of the house and I'd really kind of given up. I am happy on my own. I would have my bad days, but I have a successful career. I travel around the country with work and, I would date here and there, but really nothing serious in quite a few years. Last Labor Day, we were discussing this a little bit before the show started. I was chatting with a man online that I'd met about 5 years ago. And he asked if he could come down to Columbia and take me out to dinner. And I said, it's a pandemic. And he said, well, could I bring dinner in? And I said, okay. And, that was last September. And here we are a year later. And my house is on the market. And I'm planning to move out of Columbia into Durham, North Carolina in the next few months. So that is quite a change. I went from kind of accepting singleness and not really expecting anything to just taking it a day at a time and kind of expecting a lot of change.
And the funny thing is, when you talk about accepting singleness is not a bad thing. I think people need to understand that there's this whole taboo thing about being single and a negative connotation surrounding being single. And sometimes you have to take that time to yourself to be single, to enjoy your singleness and your own individuality. Talk about how you have really found yourself in those moments when you have been single.
Yeah, I was single for a really long time. I loved my job. I had a couple of jobs during my 40s and had really settled in rather to a career that I loved and was kind of moving up the ranks in the company that I'm with. As I said, I had finished raising my children. Most of the time I'd done that by myself. So I had kind of gotten a lot of satisfaction out of getting them out of the house and mostly independent, spending time with them outside of my home. And then also settling into my home, fixing it up the way I wanted to. And I had really started thinking about okay, I'm ready to let go of this and move into a next phase of life, which meant okay, I'm looking for a house with no steps. I'm looking for no yard because I'm on my own. I don't have kids that need to play in it. Really thinking about a transition in life that meant a second part of life, not being old, but like I'm moving out of middle age into my next stage of life. And then surprise, I'm not in control, right? It's God's plan, not mine. And I had this wonderful surprise in the wings waiting. And here we are now. And still, I'm not really in control. Like, I'd like to make the plan. I'd like it to be on my timeline. It's still not. And so I'm just excited that we have something to look forward to. I don't quite know when it all is going to happen, but I am looking forward to it. It's an adventure.
Yeah, you brought up a good point, Mandy, and you're talking about having levels of control. I've been reading a book by Amy Morin, and it's called 13 Things That Mentally Strong People Don't Do. And I just finished reading one of the chapters about letting go of those controls and letting go of things that you cannot control. Hope to have Amy Morin on the show coming up this year to talk more about that book, because it was definitely life-changing for me. I learned a lot of advice about that. And Kimberly, that's kind of where I want to bring you in the conversation, because when it comes to letting go of those controls, it's important that you understand what you can and cannot control when it comes to, not only your life, but when it comes to dating. But there's also the importance of being intentional. It's okay to be intentional, but you have to understand when intention can sometimes cross over into sometimes being controlling.
Absolutely. First of all, thank you so much for inviting me back onto your show. Like, I always get so excited because I love your energy, first of all. And this is so important to talk about control. And first, we have to kind of put it in the context of upbringing, child rearing, how you were raised, and how, different gender roles that you observed within your own family members and within your family. So with control, for me, I think about what are your intentions? Sometimes intentions can get in the way of really connecting with your partner. You mean well, right, with the things that you want to do and the things that you say, but it's not always interpreted or received in that same way. So it boils down to communication, right? So if I feel that you have my best interest at hand, that you are doing this for the betterment of our relationship, then, my approach to or response or reaction to your quote unquote controlling behavior will be different. So if we're not on the same page, if we're having issues within our relationship and or marriage, then I'm going to feel that it's not being presented in a very positive and loving way. I'm going to feel that you are literally trying to tell me what to do because you feel that this is best for me. So communication can definitely, decrease a negative impact on whatever situation is there. And no, we don't have control. And some of us, we need to recognize that control can also mean that we're not being our best selves, right? So we have to do that self-assessment and self-evaluation day after day and say to ourselves, is this what's best for me? And sometimes it's okay for other people to lead us. So it's about changing the language that we're using too. Maybe it's not that she's trying to be controlling or he's trying to be controlling. They're just trying to help guide you and lead you because maybe they see some things that you don't see.
I think that's a great point as well, too, when you're talking about that level of leading. But, the key thing is learning from the other person that you're involved with. I think a lot of times people are get into their own worlds because as we kind of get into this huge social media age of where we are now, and there's actually somewhat of a shift in social media, and we'll kind of talk about that in a little bit. But as we get into that shift of social media, before, there was a lot of, inherent selfishness when it came to everybody's looking out for self. Everybody's trying to maintain an image, maintain that perfect image within society on their Facebook page, on their Instagram, on Twitter. Everybody's trying to maintain that certain image. But, it's important that when you are getting to know someone that, you are being intentional about learning about them, because if you're not learning about them, then how are you going to be able to relate, have a relationship with them in some aspects? You don't want it to be a one-sided, deal, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. So you made me start to think about, when you're scrolling through social media, some people can make their lives look so interesting, like it's just popping, like, oh my gosh, they're here, they're taking trips, they're buying things and making all these, wonderful photos of themselves and what they're doing. And in actuality, a lot of it, when you really sit down with them without social media, is superficial. It's just not real, right? So you get to learn two different mindsets, two different people, right? That those are the surface level things that we see. Once we get off of social media, right? We put that phone down after we just posted that picture, shit gets real. Are you really a good communicator? Are you really intentional about your day, or do you just post about being intentional? Are you truly, praying and really grounded in your spiritual life as you post all these Bible verses and quotes? Are you truly loving to your family and friends when you post about, I am that rock. I want to be that support system. But, when it boils down to it, no one really hears from you. You're only heard from when you want something.
Right.
So, that is only temporary. And it does not do as well mentally, emotionally, or spiritually, because that is something that we have to continuously keep up. And one day, all those things just magically disappear and you get to your core. And the core of individuals outside of the facade that they put up on social media is that, you're lonely, you're hurt, you've been disappointed, you're searching for love. You really don't even love yourself, but you're portraying as if you possess all these different qualities and attributes, but really you're seeking self-validation and self-acceptance from other people.
Yeah, that you said a mouthful right there. We've got some people chiming in on the conversation right now. So you're bringing some great points to the table, Kimberly, and I really appreciate that. And talking about how you're showing up, and then that whole facade. What do you think, and what have you been hearing? Because you're married yourself. Yes. What have you been hearing about some of the difficulties and challenges that some people are facing in 2021 when it comes to just generally just trying to get to know someone, even just on a platonic level?
Time. No one has time. Listen, if you're begging for someone's time, if you are in a situation where you feel like there's not transparency there, those are things that you should not have to beg for. Those are red flags, right? So they tell you, I'm really busy. Like tonight, I have to go and help my mom do this. But then 3 hours later, you see them posted up with a bottle in the club. That and no communication. You're like, well, wait, you said one thing and you're doing another. Consistency. There's no consistency there. I hear a lot of women and men say, I dish out this type of love, attention, focus, and effort, but I feel like I'm not getting that in return. So because I want a relationship, or I want that engagement ring so bad, I am going to then lessen my importance, decrease my importance within the relationship in order to give them a leadway. Why do you have to sacrifice so much about yourself in order to make someone else feel comfortable and important? And you're sacrificing things that you should not. So, being authentic, that's another thing. Again, social media says one thing, but when you're at home and you want to cook a dinner together, they're emotionally unavailable. They're physically unavailable. They're tapped into their phones. They're more so concerned about what someone has said or posted or liked their picture. That's what they want to talk about, not real life issues, right? So, and then also when it comes down to money and finances, people want to know, what can I get out of you? What can you give me? So some people have an air about them, an arrogance as well, as if you don't deserve my love and attention, right? My respect, you're going to have to earn it. And guess what? If that means that I have to walk all over you talk to you any kind of way, then that's just going to how it's going to be. You have to accept me, but they don't want to make those adjustments to accept who you are.
Wow. You said you said a lot on that note. We've got people commenting in the show tonight, and you feel free to ask questions of Kimberly and of course of Mandy as well. We want this to be a interactive discussion. We want people to weigh in and ask their questions, and also, just weigh in on their own dating lives as well. Mandy, what are some of the things that I know I saw you kind of nodding at what Kimberly was talking about in agreement, but what are some of the things that you're finding or that you have found to be difficult when it comes to dating?
Sorry, I was on.
No, you're good.
I thought I took myself off. I apologize. Really, about, like Kimberly said, learning about one another. We had known each other for 5 years. And we had watched each other online, right? We had chatted a few times. We had congratulated each other on career goals and things that we had accomplished. But really, day to day, getting to know one another, it has been a challenge. We don't have similar upbringings necessarily. We're different races. That is a whole different experience, as you all know. I'm not telling you something you don't know. And so while Brandon knows I am very open and I am a lifelong learner, there are some things I'm never going to understand. And, I can't cling to, right? He is, like you said about like going out and versus staying home. I am a homebody. And it's only gotten worse during COVID. And so, the first 6 months of our relationship, we were stuck like glue together because, the pandemic was still fairly new and nobody was going anywhere. Everything was shut down. And then things started to open up a little bit. And he's like, oh, I'm going to like tiptoe out a little bit. I'm like, wait, where are you going? You're supposed to be with me. And so we had to work out what that looked like. And Brandon knows I don't drink. I'm not a drinker. I've been sober for a very long time. And Jeremy is not much of a drinker, but he likes to go out once a week, sometimes twice, and have a bourbon and smoke a cigar. I mean, that is like how he relaxes. And at first I was like, you're going where? You're going to a bar? And he's like, let me show you a picture of the inside of this bar and you will have nothing to worry about. And now I kind of like it because that's where he is right now. I got the place to myself. I can get on here. I can talk about him. He's never going to have any idea what's going on, and by the time he comes home, I'll be asleep. I get to watch whatever I want on TV. It's all about figuring these things out, not taking everything personal. Like every decision he makes isn't about me and vice versa. And then also in the ways that we're different, it's like, why don't, how I look at those, I need to be interested in those. I need to learn from those and not look at them like there's some kind of like hit on me, right? Oh, he was raised different or he believes differently than I do about that. Okay, that's nothing against me or what I believe. It's just different. Maybe I need to learn something different. Another thing about it is, one of the things I really missed about being in a partnership, and this might sound old fashioned, but I kind of missed like having someone else make decisions sometimes. Like I was in charge of everything all the time. And so I looked forward to kind of having a leader in our home besides me. And then when it started to happen, I was like, wait a minute, are you bossing me around? Like you're telling me what to do? So I kind of had to get used to like turning over some of the decision making and then being happy when it didn't go exactly the way I wanted it to go. And now I'm starting to realize that that's probably a good thing. Like Mandy's way isn't always the best way. And he actually knows more about some things than I do. I mean, he has a different upbringing. He has a different education. He has seen different parts of the world than I have. And I don't know everything there is to know. So it really does help to let go of some of that and welcome in someone else's knowledge and background.
Yeah. Yeah. The interesting thing is, speaking of talking about different backgrounds, I'm reading an article from Pre-Research talking about, some of the dating pitfalls. And one of the biggest things that we've seen a rise in a lot when it comes to relationships and dating is long distance relationships. Mm-hmm. Now, according to this article, 47% of Americans are now saying that dating is harder, much harder than what it was 10 years ago. That's almost half of the population who are saying, dating is difficult. So for all you people out there who are, dating and you're struggling, you're not alone. It's more close to half of Americans are saying this. But we're seeing a huge rise in long distance relationships as well. And those relationships can create a lot of challenges within themselves, Kimberly. And I think a reason why is you have to have very tough emotions when it comes to being in a long distance relationship. And you also have to be very secure with the relationship and also be very secure not only with yourself, but also with the person that you're dating as well, too. Because once those insecurities creep in, you're going to be in for a messy ride, essentially.
Absolutely. And I can speak to that. Definitely was in a relationship at one point in my life, long distance relationship. And when you speak about being secure within yourself, you really do have to. That's a must. The trust is a huge factor. You can't just hop in your car and just drive around the corner, say, hey, let's meet for dinner. You're not waking up with each other in the morning, going to bed together. So a lot of the things that, individuals or partners will do in relationships, you really have to be creative as well in how you make connections with each other. So I've found that communication is a huge piece, but when it comes down to it, if you're not secure within yourself, if you're not trusting yourself to, be vulnerable, and to really allow yourself to be available, when they make time for that other person, then it's gonna be difficult. If you're holding things back as well, when they told you that, hey, I got to go to bed early, and you're like, well, it's 8:30. You really didn't have a hard day. Why can't you talk to me? Then you're wondering, like, are you about to have somebody else over? So, you're 45 minutes later, you're FaceTiming, like, I just want to see what's going on. Like, are you still sleepy? Those types of things. So those are called those self-sabotaging behaviors that impede on, creating a positive and cohesive connection with that partner that's long distance. But let's be clear. There are some things and some people that just can't be trusted. They are going to use that to their advantage. And a lot of people utilize long distance relationships for that reason, so that you don't have access. It's about access to them. And it's not everyone, don't get me wrong, but those people that really are not about commitment, they like to have attachments and connections for accessibility, their intentions. So, ways to combat that, again, communicating openly, talking about having those courageous conversations. Last night when you told me you went to bed, for some reason, I couldn't get it out of my head, because the other night when I saw you and I talked to you, you said that you were going to call me back. You never called me back. But then I see you chilling with your homeboy, I'm uncomfortable. So you have to not only be vulnerable within your own insecurities, address them, and really make adjustments along the way. Is this the type of relationship that you want? What are your expectations? And as they say, expectations are, premeditated resentments and disappointments. You have to kind of go with the flow and figure it out. And that's the thing, whether you're in a long distance relationship, you're dating, or in a marriage. If you're not consistently communicating, you can't, people aren't mind readers. There are always going to be pitfalls. So long distance relationships, local relationships or marriages, it depends on your core values and your long-term goals. Are they meeting them? Are you having unrealistic expectations and standards for this person?
Right. And you know what? I want to kind of, because there's 2 points that I didn't want to forget. One, we'll kind of come back to that in a second. We'll talk about also a rise in open relationships.
Oh, yes.
we gonna dive into that in just a second. But when you're talking about the one point that you made about long distance relationships, being able to build that trust, I think that's the issue that so many people face, is the fact that you've got to set that foundation for trust early on, and then of course being able to be accessible. You don't want to be excessive with trying to track down someone, but then at the same time the other person does need to be accessible at times and say, hey, I'm showing up the way that I need to in order to make you feel secure and make you feel comfortable with what we have going on. And I think that's Mandy, kind of what you were alluding to as well, that you have that security, and your now dating partner has made you feel secure in your relationship.
Yeah, I mean, it hasn't always been perfect. We've had some of those nights, like Kimberly was talking about, and I think especially on his side, because I am the person that goes to bed early. And so early on in the relationship, I'd be like, okay, great talking to you. Good night. It's like 8:30 or 9 o'clock. And he's sitting there at 11:30, 12 o'clock at midnight by himself. Like, I wonder if she's really been asleep that long, or, somebody over there. Why didn't she answer my text back? I mean, that kind of thing. And I think that it really did cause us some trouble. And maybe he didn't bring it up right away because it was new. We were new. He didn't want to cause that disruption, but he held on to it, right, until months in, to when he felt comfortable bringing it up. And he's like, yeah, well, remember back in November when you didn't answer the phone on the 4th of November? Tell me what happened that night. I'm like, what? What? I was asleep, and so, there was some of that. And so it hasn't been easy. We've had to keep communicating because then, I get hurt that he didn't trust me fully. And then I say, well, if you don't trust me, is there some reason I shouldn't trust you? And, we get some of that going. To be truthful, we have the same kind of core values, like Kimberly was talking about, and we're not cheaters. I mean, we believe in a monogamous relationship. We've both been in previous relationships that went south, in previous marriages that went south. And one thing we never did was cheat on our partners. And so I believe strongly in him. And I think that he's beginning to have that same confidence in me. And so it is getting easier in that way. I think that the little things are the bigger things now. It's like, can we really wake up every morning together? And do we really know how to handle these disagreements? Excuse me, because at our core, we seem to share similar values. And I think we knew that going in. I think the way we met at a work conference where we were both working against the death penalty. And when you meet at an event like that, that is very specialized and also very, it's a very kind of tender, ethical subject matter. We knew right when we met that we had similar values and ethics. And so, the first time I saw him after that, when he showed up at my house that night, we knew that in some ways we just agreed.
Wow. That's to meet under those circumstances. I mean, that actually helps, establish that foundation of trust,
that's right,
strength, and that's an amazing testimony to hear. before we start talking about open relationships, Mandy, something you did say, and we talk about asking those important questions. And I want to kind of bring that to you, Kimberly, to ask you this. A lot of times when it comes to asking questions, I mean, yes, it is important to ask those things. But here's another thing that I've thought about as well, too, when it comes to asking questions. You can ask all the questions you want, but that doesn't mean that the person that you're involved with is going to be truthful.
Very true.
So, I mean, when you talk about asking, like, okay, well, you said you were going to bed, but then, I kind of, I was on, Facebook last night and I kind of saw that your profile was active.
Oh, yeah.
Because trust me, social media has that footprint, and people have done that numerous times where it's like, okay, well, your social media said you was just active like 3 minutes ago. So what's going on here? So, I mean, you can ask that question, and then, the other person can come up with a cleverly crafted lie and be like, oh, well, I was asleep. I don't know why my account did that. Or, so
seems like you've heard it before.
Right. Yeah. So here's the thing. How can you really ensure, and I think this goes to, at the core, knowing yourself and trusting yourself enough to know when somebody may be being dishonest with you, because, I mean, there are people who are very good at playing games. There are people who are very good at being manipulative and, and having an answer for everything. So talk about why it's important to trust yourself when it comes to some of these situations where you're asking the tough questions, but you believe you may not be getting the honest answers.
That kind of hit home with me too. I felt it like, yeah. Trusting yourself, number one, to be vulnerable is very courageous. It's a courageous act. If you can't trust yourself to be vulnerable and to make conscious and logical decisions, there's no way you're going to be able to trust anyone else. So one thing, when I speak to individuals in sessions, I don't like to focus a lot on them trusting someone else or, somewhat being vulnerable or allowing themselves to be vulnerable. I like to focus on you as the individual. What is it about you that impedes on your growth and progression within not only trusting yourself, but loving yourself enough to speak up when you're uncomfortable, right? So, when it comes to being in an active, engaging relationship, if you're not addressing those tough questions, right, and you're not having those courageous conversations, you are just selling yourself short. You're already impeding on what could be a really good relationship and an opportunity to connect, to learn, and to grow together. It also boils down to you not wanting to be hurt. No one wants to be hurt. Like, let's just be clear about it. You get to the point where you're asked the question, even yourself, but you don't even believe it. You don't believe yourself. You don't believe anyone. So you've already made up in your mind that these behaviors, these thoughts, these words are already defeating. It's just already gone. So you have to focus on yourself. Again, what has happened to me that I can't trust myself and trust other people? When they give me their word, what is it? What is that mental block that impedes on that? So that work starts with yourself before you can really trust anyone else. Another thing is time will tell everything. Yeah. You can talk a good game all you want. You can sell those wolf tickets. You can, polish up a good lie, but a lie can only stand the test of time. And the test of time means you have to continue that lie, right? So little bit by little bit, again, you're focusing on yourself, being balanced, mentally and emotionally, to recognize those small things that they've either said or they've either done, and it just doesn't add up. And if it doesn't add up, it doesn't make sense, and something's wrong.
I agree. We got some commenters commenting here. Self-love is a must. I think that's an amazing component of any healthy relationship, or when you're dating. In order to love yourself, you can't love anyone else, before you're able to first love yourself. And I think that's why there's also a rise in unhealthy and toxic relationships, because people are not willing to do the work in order
Right.
to improve themselves, and that's a huge issue that we're facing in this new age of dating. As John, who's not here on the show tonight, he's so adequate. We had a conversation the other day. He so adequately put it. You cannot acknowledge, I believe this is how he was saying it, you cannot acknowledge what you do not accept. I hope that makes sense. I believe that's how he was saying it. Kimberly, you can kind of elaborate on that.
It just boils down to you understanding that acceptance means it's going to equal to some type of thought or feeling that may be pleasant or unpleasant, right? So if it's something that I don't want to recognize within myself, okay, self-love is also self-reflection, self-assessment.
Yep.
If it's something that I don't want to accept about me or someone else, because again, what are my intentions? If I do that, then that means I don't get what I want. That means I might not get that bag. That means that I may not go out to that fancy restaurant. That means I can't bring her or him home to my family, and it's around Thanksgiving. So you know what? I'm just going to just swallow my pride and just sweep my feelings and things under the rug just to get along. So, if you can't truly accept reality for what it is, you will constantly be in an internal war with yourself, right? Mm-hmm. And acceptance means when you do that, you have to act as well. Sometimes maybe there's by actions or behaviors, or it just simply may be about you adjusting yourself mentally and emotionally and accepting that person for who they are. And then you say, is this person or this situation conducive or positive for the path and journey that I'm on? So acceptance comes down to making some tough decisions. And when you make tough decisions, that means what's next.
Right.
You then have to continuously keep that up. So it comes down to accountability.
Yep. Accountability. That's another strong A word as well, too. Accountability. Let's get down to the topic that we were so ready to discuss, and it's so taboo now, talking about open relationships. That's a huge one. Excuse me. Me personally, I can't subscribe to an open relationship. That's just not me. My roots are kind of grounded in a more traditional form of dating and relationships. It's 2021. I get it. People are probably saying, it's cool. It's okay. It works for some people, and then it doesn't work for others. So let's start and kind of dissect what may work for a open relationship. Mandy, I'll start with you. What do you think would potentially work for an open? And I already know your response. That's not you.
You're asking the wrong old thing.
That's not you. But if you had to say anything, what could potentially work for an open relationship?
I don't know, because I have never been in that type of relationship. I think I've been in one where the man thought he was in an open relationship. But I wasn't in it. It's a one-sided open relationship, right? But I guess in order for it to work, it would have to be mutual. Like, you have to agree to be in that type of relationship. I do have friends and family that are willing to do that and talk about it as if it's completely normal and they're comfortable with it and it works for them. And from what I understand, it's got to be mutual, right? I mean, you can't have one person getting jealous and the other person going out. I mean, it's not like the situations we've just now talked about, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so, like you said, it's foreign to me. I cannot imagine myself doing that. I would not be comfortable with it. I don't judge those that are doing it. I just know it's not for Mandy Halloran. Gratefully, it's not for the man that I'm with either. He doesn't have that expectation of freedom outside of this home, and he doesn't want me to have it either. Happy that they're happy, but that's not what I subscribe to.
Well, Kimberly, as Mandy just so adequately put, yes, communication is a huge thing when it comes to open relationships. And to be honest with you, there are people who think that they would be okay with it, but then once they're actually involved in that type of situation, they're not, because no matter what you do, whether you decide to be in an open relationship or not, whoever is the convincing party or whatever, there's always still going to be that level of, again, those insecurities that are going to creep in. For some people, if they want to be open that way and be like, you know what, I'm cool with you just doing you, and I'm gonna do me, and as long as we communicate about it. But there's gonna be those times where I feel like there's gonna be that temptation to not communicate. Well, you know what, my partner doesn't need to know everything. We've established that we're having that discussion, but then there's those times where they're like, I'm gonna just omit that and not have that conversation. So that can be very dangerous territory. So kind of talk about what you think are some things, and for everyone else, please chime in as well too and ask those questions. Do you think, the question right that we're talking about right now, do you think an open relationship can work when it comes to dating? And then we're going to kind of transition from that and talk about dating multiple people. But for right now, can an open relationship work?
Well, and Mandy, I am in full agreement with you. It's just not going to work for me. And when you spoke about, someone being in an open relationship and not knowing it, I totally can relate and understand as well. And that's a hard thing. That's what I'm finding a lot as I, conduct sessions. People are being lied to. They are being presented, to family and friends as my one and only. And, it's a facade. It's just not true. That's a cover up, a lot of cover ups. And a lot of people I've found have not dealt with the trauma, childhood trauma from mothers and fathers and extended family members. They didn't receive, or gain secure attachments. So they feel like they have to have multiple relationships or attachments to people to feel whole, to feel accepted, to really have that love, because you have to have many different people to provide or fulfill many different needs that you have that were unmet. So I found that this concept of open marriage or open relationships results back to unmet childhood needs as well. Let's be clear about something. Our grandparents, great grandparents, they were in open relationships.
They didn't know it.
Okay, let's be clear. And they had many wives. They were married to one, but they had many wives and many children. Yeah, drink that tea on that one.
This is tea. This is not crime for y'all who looking.
Okay. I'll have that later. But
I was listening in like, what's that?
Right. Look, he had to take a little sip on that one.
Yep.
But so we have to think about it, in a traditional sense too. And we found this a lot in, we don't talk about it. This is kind of taboo, right? But you accept that child outside that marriage. You never accepted that relationship, right? But you know that there was a child somewhere out there, and you just get along to get along. So the unmet childhood attachments filter into early adulthood, and it becomes an issue when that person does not say off the bat, listen, I'm not ready for a committed relationship. I want to date you. I want to date her. I want to date him. And I want us to be just one happy family. Right. So it doesn't work if you don't have, as Mandy said, that mutual understanding. Right. And then let's be clear. Some people do it way after, like, I just wanted to see if you were a right fit for me. So then you'll be a right fit for us. But that was not communicated from the beginning. So I've provided therapy to quite a few individuals and couples who it works for them, because why? They don't want to be committed. It comes down to commitment and intentions. Your intentions are not to just be with one person. And ultimately, no, it doesn't work, because it comes down to jealousy, envy. There are going to be times where you want your partner to be there with you, but you know what? It's her night or it's his night, and it's just not going to work. There's going to be that jealousy and that envy and emptiness, right? And so to each his own. I'm like you, Mandy. I don't judge. If it works for you, I'm happy for you. But at the end of the day, you're still going to be searching for something.
Right. Yep. And I'll chime in on that to also agree that I don't think that open relationships can work either. And again, as Lauren Floyd has commented, she was saying that I'll put that back up. I don't think an open relationship can work. What's the point of a relationship if it's open? And exactly. I mean, at the same time, if you want to date multiple people or you want to have, casual relationships with multiple people, that's okay. It just needs to be communicated. Absolutely. But as far as an open relationship is concerned, your self-worth is what's really going to take a huge beating. Absolutely. And, as we've talked about before, when it comes to trust and fidelity, I've been on that end of, my partner cheating on me. So knowing that this person is out there doing those things and they have not stopped and they will not stop, is something that is extremely hurtful. And you start to feel, okay, well, what am I here for? You start to feel feelings of worthlessness. You start to doubt yourself, and who wants to feel that way? I mean, that's, unfortunately it's a taboo word, but that's toxic. Who wants to feel like they're in a situation where they're not valued, and I think that's where people have to ask those questions, because at the end of the day, if you're agreeing to be in a relationship with someone, then that's what it should be. Now, if you're in a place where you're not ready to be in a relationship, then that's okay. Just communicate that and say, hey, this is where I'm at. And then, but I think what happens is a lot of the times why people are accepting of open relationships is because they still want to have that person, Kimberly, as you said, then also have the other, people as well too. Or if they're not communicating the fact that they want an open relationship, then that means that they're being not only dishonest with themselves, but they're being dishonest with the other person and not allowing the other person the choice of saying whether I want to actually be a part of this situation. Because everybody has a choice in what they do and how they do it and what they accept in their lives. Everything is a choice. And I think that's the main thing people need to take away from that portion of it.
I agree. And I say that a lot in sessions with couples. If this is what your values are, if this is what you're proud of, if this is what you want to do, don't make that decision for the other person. At least give them that option to say, hell, I'm all in. What's going to be next? Or say, I'm not comfortable with that. And if that's what you want to do, I can respect your decision, but I can also respect what I want and what I need in my life. And ultimately, I truly go back to just, because a lot of people, as you said, you say, well, what's wrong with me? I don't feel like I'm enough. And that person could be giving everything they got, plus more, making ultimate sacrifices of themselves, their soul, their spirit, and their body. So it comes down to a betrayal. It's like a betrayal. Like, who are you? Do I really know you? Have you just totally been this person that has been made up in my mind? So, I mean, it has really caused people to go into a deep depression, and really they want to call it quits. I don't want to date anymore. I don't want to experience this anymore because, how can I believe or be vulnerable again? So, they say hurt people, but they're just mean, dishonest, disloyal, unfaithful people who never intend. When they even go down on one knee in front of your whole family, they set it up with the flowers and the camera and, the video, and you're crying, and it's just picture perfect.
Right.
And then you go home, and the moment you fall asleep, they are on their phone sliding into somebody else's DM. Boo, I did just propose to her, but you're the one that I hold truly in my heart. And although I might marry her, I'm really in love with you.
And it happens more often than people think. And that's the thing that I also have to put that I've put in my mind, and is basically engraved in my mind in terms of like, you can be not only in a relationship, but you can be married to someone and that person is still being dishonest to you. That person is still, not being faithful. it does not matter. They're just people who are just not going to commit one way or another around that. And so that's a huge red flag that hopefully some people can spot early on, so that way they can avoid that heartache a little bit down the road. Mom is watching the show tonight, and she's asking a question of Kimberly. And the question is, so in counsel of open relationships, what is the psychological frame of mind for these couples?
I really feel like it boils down to, I use a lot of CBT, cognitive behavior techniques. Are your actions lining up with your thoughts and your emotions? Are you truly aligned with yourself? Is this truly what you want? Solution focused, frameworks to, well, if this is what you want, an open relationship, well, then how do you get there? It's not my job to judge them. This is what you are both agreeing to. So, let's come up with a plan. And, they tell me what they want. Is this working? No. Well, then come back to the drawing board. I also like to address people individually and speak to them individually. A lot of it I have found too is grounded in abuse. Again, I go back to unmet childhood needs and attachment. So again, are you coming from a space where you are clear about what you want, or are you coming from a space of psychological trauma? Are your trauma speaking to you and driving you, or are you truly logical in your thinking, right? And so a lot of it too, people go back to, well, my father didn't love me. So, I saw my mom having to adjust to many different women, and it made my father happy. It made him love us more. So I felt that, if I continue along those same lines, that I would get that same love and affection from my partner, So unfortunately, a lot of people truly, again, as you said, Brandon, they think that's what they want, but it's grounded and it's founded on trauma. It's grounded and it's founded on unmet needs. And honestly, people are lost spiritually.
Yeah.
They're broken, and they're just trying to find love in any way that they can. And if it's subjecting themselves to a partner who wants them and everyone else, they'll do it.
That's a show topic all in itself right there. I mean, we could talk about that all night, and just how trauma does show up, and then but also just the level of people who have been missing that love in their lives, and not able to cope and connect in that way, in a loving way with someone that they are involved with. So we could definitely schedule another show on that topic, but moving forward, we got a few more minutes left. This is a big question that I think a lot of people want to address as well too. Should I date multiple people? Mandy, you want to start? You want to provide some insight on that one? Is it a good thing to date multiple people? Do you believe it's a good thing to date multiple people?
You mean like not be in a relationship and just kind of being out?
Not a relationship. Yeah, you're just kind of getting on the scene and you're meeting people like in conversation, that type of deal, but not in a relationship. No.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess for me, it's kind of like the previous question. I think it's up to the individual as to what you can and can't handle. My first husband I met when I was 17 years old. And we dated for 5 years, and I was engaged, and we got married, and it ended up being, a 15-year relationship. And then Brandon, as you know, he got very sick with mental illness, and he changed. His brain changed, and his lifestyle changed, and his values changed, all because his mental illness really changed the core of who he was. And so I got a divorce. He ended up passing away, and I started dating, and I was not equipped for that. I was very naive. I was very innocent, so to speak. And so in my situation, that was just not a good idea. I mean, I did it, but it was not pretty. And I didn't know how to protect myself in that way, emotionally, physically, mentally, because I didn't go through some of the lessons some young women learn in college and in their early 20s. I was with the man that I was planning to be with the rest of my life. And and I look at my daughter now, it's a different situation. She's 22. She's the age I was when I was about to get married. She does date different people, and it is a different world, and she seems to do okay with it. But I didn't do so great. And so I just think it depends on who you are. I tell that story to like my boyfriend now, and he's like, "What? You were naive? You?" And I was like, "Yeah, I really was." And I mean, I learned a lot through the years, not by choice, but just I had to survive. And so, I mean, I guess eventually I learned how to properly protect myself. But as a result, I ended up not really dating that many people. I got into relationships, and nothing real serious. But I dated one person at a time. I mean, even when I wasn't very serious, I wasn't out having 3 or 4 people, juggling my phone and, doing all that. I would see one person at a time. And if it was time to move on, it was time to move on. But I just wasn't good at dating numerous people at once. And sometimes that meant that I hurt them or I got hurt. But I wasn't a multiple person kind of dater.
Yeah.
Just not my gig.
That makes perfect sense. And I mean, Kimberly, I kind of let you end off the show on that. We'll also bring in the fact of making those meaningful connections. Sometimes, it's good to get to know, more than one person if you can handle it, because obviously that allows you to determine what you do and what you don't like when it comes to dating, or even when it comes to certain individuals that you're involved with. That doesn't mean that you go out and sleep with everybody,
Right.
That's the most important thing I think people need to understand. It's not about going out sleeping with everybody, but making those meaningful connections, I think, and that's what we're missing in this day and age. And what's so complicated about dating in 2021 is the fact that everyone is just connecting with so many people for so many different reasons.
Right.
A lot of times we don't even have a reason for connecting with some folks. But again, when you do meet someone and you allow yourself, to spend that time to get to know that person, then there's the possibility that more of a meaningful connection can develop, right?
Absolutely. 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 Men, women, you should date multiple people. If you're on the dating scene and you are trying to figure out if someone is a liability or asset, I mean, you really just have to do that. Also, when I think about dating multiple people, how much time do you have? What types of goals and aspirations and things do you have going on at the time? Is this applicable to, again, what you're trying to do? Is this something that you can continuously keep up with? What is your purpose? What is your intentions? And if it's just to have fun and just, go out for drinks sometimes, that's okay. But if you're looking for a serious relationship, a committed relationship, and especially if you meet someone else who also wants the same thing, like Mandy said, that probably is not the best option for you, right? You want to be able to kind of pour yourself into this person or this situationship in order to figure out really if you are making meaningful connections through, their consistency, their communication, and how well you connect. So, again, it boils down to what you want. Like, some people just don't want to be in a relationship. They want situationships. They want people they can just hang out with. And you start to realize This person is probably good for me, business wise or intellectually. I can connect with this person. This person is really good with, designing or a home or creating a home. So again, it depends on that person and what they want and what they're looking for. If it's aligning with your current core values and your long-term goals regarding a relationship. And if you don't date, right, it's just like, in a business or a grocery store is, oh gosh, I'm not selling anything else anymore. You're going to starve people. So when you totally give up on love and dating, right, you're starving yourself of opportunities of growth, learning, and progressing. And you could also miss out on that number one person that's really good for you.
Yeah. All great advice tonight, ladies. I'm so glad that you can join the show. And we had a great discussion talking about just how you being intentional about your communication, being intentional about being secure, learning to trust yourself, determining whether certain types of relationships can work for you and should you date multiple people. Those are all topics that we did discuss tonight. So again, this is a relationship series that I'm looking to do, and we'll have different guests on the show. So, ladies, as always, I'm glad to have you here. I mean, whenever we get together, we always talk about some great things when it comes to this topic in general. So look for us again in the next 2 weeks where we're going to be coming back and we're going to be talking about casual sex. That's going to be an interesting one right there. So
don't ask me.
That's a whole different one to delve into right there when it comes to dating. But yeah, it's a topic we have to discuss. And I think a lot of people are going to want to weigh in on that discussion. So Kimberly Johnson, thank you so much for being here. Mandy, always great to have you as well. Thank you so much. And we will see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Have a good one.